Hi everyone, this is Learn Excel Now, here to show you exactly how to work with a macro and write your own and just accomplish a simple task with it. So just to help demonstrate things, let's say we want to know how many of these items here on our left are paid rather than unpaid. So it might not seem like a lot, there's only 8 amounts, so we could easily count this ourselves, but if we had a spreadsheet with 1,000,000 entries and we want to know how many of those million are actually paid, it would take us too long. So this is where macros come in handy. So let's see how we would go about figuring out the exact count of how many these items are paid. So we go over to our Visual Basic editor. We first have to begin by creating a module. So go to Insert and then Module. See, it pops up with the regular workspace. We're going to go ahead and rename the module to we'll just call this one Practice because that's what it is. And yeah, just get in the habit of renaming your modules and giving them names that will make it easier to find exactly what you're looking for. So really to begin writing a macro, this is, at least when you're beginning, this is how you're going to start each one. Begin by typing in sub, and then you give it a name. So since we're trying to count something, we're going to call this sub count. You press enter, and Excel automatically adds end sub for you, so you don't have to worry about that. Of course, if you wanted to call this anything else, you could just change count to whatever else you might need to, and Excel will still be able to activate it. So one way to do this is to begin by declaring our variables. Now, I'm sure if you've taken algebra, familiar with what a variable is. It really, in Excel and any other programming language that you might come across, variables count as placeholders. They can hold integers, any sort of decimal number, strings of text, and you really tell the computer exactly what you want it to hold. So in our case, we're going to be working with the rows and the columns, so those are both integers in the way they're represented in Excel. I know that the columns do use the letters of the alphabet, but internally for VBA of Visual Basic, these are actually just 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And the rows are, of course, numbered as they are. So we're going to begin by declaring a variable. You need to do this by typing in dim, and this is the name of it. You type in as, and then these are the different variables you can declare. We're going to be working with integers, so we're going to call our integer called row, and we're going to make it an integer. Okay. So we also need another variable that will hold the number of counts of paid submissions. So we're going to go ahead and declare another one. We're going to call this one count. We'll also declare it an integer. So we go about assigning a value to these. We're going to start with row. So we know that the first row that we're interested in is row 5. This is where the first status exists on our Excel sheet. So we're going to go ahead and call up row. We're going to say row equals 5. And this will it'll become very apparent why I'm doing this in a few seconds here. Right, so count, we don't know how many paid statuses there are, so we're going to set count as 0. Now, this is a very basic function in Excel that you will, in a VBA, that you will encounter all the time as you're writing your macros. So this is just a while loop, and basically it is executed so long as a condition is met. So for our purposes here, we're going to find the last row here, row 12. We're going to go back here. So while row is less than or equal to 12, this is our condition. So long as this row integer has a value of less than or equal to 12, which it does at the moment, since it's equal to 5, this loop will keep going, and depending on what we put inside, Excel will keep running through it. So as we open this loop, you must remember that every time you open a loop, you have to close the loop so that Excel knows when to end it. So the way to do that with a while loop is to type in wend, so while end. Logical, right? Okay, so right now we've got this loop, but it doesn't really do anything. So like I said earlier, we want to find out which of these cells contains the value paid. So So just like if you were looking through this logically, how would you process this just in your mind? So if I see a value of paid, that means that there is at least one more count of paid than we had before. So this is what we're going to tell the computer to do, basically. So if cells, we're going to put in the value of our row and our column index. So like I said before, columns have corresponding numerical values, not alphabetical values. So B will become 2. And I will explain everything about this in 1 second. Alright, so if the cell that exists at the value of row, which is 5, so row 5, column 2, has the certain value, and if that value equals paid, then we'll give it a condition. So for us, basically, our condition is we take our count integer, which we already declared to be 0. So at this point, it's still got a value of 0. We're telling Excel, as soon as you find a value of paid in that column or in that row, then this count integer is going to be increased by 1. And we do that by saying count is equal to itself, count, plus 1. Very simple. And then, since if is a conditional, we're going to go ahead and type in end if, so we tell Excel when to stop checking for this condition. So just to go back and go over this in a little bit more detail. So cells is what you use whenever you're trying to find the exact value or a quality of a certain cell in your spreadsheet. So for our purposes, we're just trying to go through and look at the row in a certain column, and we're trying to look at that value in that specific column in that specific row, and we're checking to make sure that the value in there is paid. You need the quotation marks because it's a string. If we're just looking for a value, a monetary value, let's say of like 12, we just type in 12, no need for quotations. But since this is in fact a string of characters, we will need the quotes around it. So basically, if the value in this row and column is equal to paid, then we're going to increase the numerical value of count by 1. So very simple. So now we need to tell Excel that although we want this to happen continually, we also want the row value to increase every time. So we're going to go ahead and do row is equal to row plus 1. And this is how you increase by 1 the value of any integer that you've assigned in Excel. So basically, all this is going to do is the loop is initiated. It's going to check this value. If it finds paid, count will be increased by 1. Once it breaks out of this if statement, row will be increased by 1, and this loop will keep going until the value of row exceeds 12. So that is a good way to check this out. Now we want to be able to see how many of these paid statuses there actually are. So what we're going to do is have Excel create a little message box for us that's going to pop up as soon as it runs through this loop and this macro in general. That's going to tell us exactly what we need to know. So message box, when you type in count, what this really means is that a message box will pop up with the value of this integer, and it can be any integer, or you can just give it like a straight number or a string. It'll just pop in a little message box. So this is our basic macro. We've written it from the get-go. So let's see what happens when we run it. I'm going to go ahead and press run sub, or you could press F5 and just be faster about it. Okay, so Excel went through this. It checked every single one of these rows in column B, as long as they were under 12, and came back with a value of 4 paid statuses. So if we look over here, we have 1, we have 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so this function here did exactly what we needed it to do. We ran through declaring our integers. Well, in fact, we ran through creating our own function, making our integers, giving them a value, creating a loop creating an if statement, and going through the way to find a value and go through that. And we went through going through a message box. So if you have any questions, just leave a comment. Otherwise, we will go into more detail into how these functions work, but this will be a good baseline to help everybody get settled in to working with macros and being able to make Excel do exactly what you want. Thanks for watching. This was Learn Excel Now.